it's so quiet in here today. It's almost like a lot of people are just off for whatever reason. Yeah, I wish you all a happy and a Merry Christmas. Hope everyone is doing well. I'm gonna switch on our camera here in just a sec. I just noticed that my battery was running out. Yeah, how far we get. I need to do something loud. This is not great. Oh no, I'm not. I'm just lying. I have a great day, actually. A very productive day. Yeah. Hello, Swan. Hello, Dale. Hello, Satish. How are you all doing? Hope you're doing well. Did you all celebrate Christmas or whatever you do over there? Like, hope you got some great food, spent some time with the family, all that good stuff. Let me switch on over as well, and then we'll see how long we last. Like, you know the deal. The camera might switch out at a certain point, but we will see. Tomorrow I will. Oh, that's awesome, Swan. That's awesome. Yeah, we have something scheduled with the family on Sunday, so I told them that I had to be working here, so here we are. Yeah, but honestly, like, I love to keep the routine going, especially because with the move and all that kind of stuff, right? I kind of want to get back into it. So, and plus, there's like a whole bunch of stuff in the background going on that I feel like I got some stuff to do after the stream anyway, you know? I'd rather keep working for a little bit. Hello, Eden. Damn, I'm here early. Yeah. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, been good. How's yours been? Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. We didn't really do anything, like I was just saying. Like, we have our thing scheduled on Sunday. So that's when we're gonna get together with the family. I think my family is actually celebrating with my uncle today. So it's all just scattered because my sister had to work and all that kind of stuff. So it's actually, yeah, it's actually we're trying to get together over the weekend, which is good. So plus also we're seeing each other on Friday as well. So we got some get-togethers planned. But yeah, I've just been working on a whole bunch of stuff, really. So for some of you who've seen the announcement in the Discord chat, right? For some of you who might have seen the stuff in the Discord chat, there's one really big thing that I was kind of dreading to do, which I finally kind of jumped in, and I was like, hey, look, okay, like, if I'm not gonna do it, then I mean, I just had to do it. Honestly, there was no way around it. So as some of you have seen, we've been transitioning. I'm not gonna make this all boring, but we've basically been transitioning from one instance to our backend to another instance of our backend, which means that we initially needed to take like all the data and just transport it over without like screwing everyone's like subscription over. So that's been interesting. An interesting experience. First time we're doing it as well, but it's because we moved countries and all that kind of stuff. That hopefully the migration is currently actually happening in the background. It will I can properly start testing it around 12 tonight. So around 12, I'm gonna see if everything worked out, and then do a bit more cleanup work. But then hopefully we can open up the dashboards and all that kind of stuff again, because that stuff is now all blocked. It's kind of unfortunate, but here's hoping. Here's hoping. I think it's gonna work. I did a lot of tests, did a lot of preparations, a lot of checking. So hopefully that migration works well. And then honestly, from that point on, God, I never want to move country again, because this has been so stressful that I don't want to deal with it. But yeah, so that's gonna go well, and then hopefully I don't have to do that ever again, because that's gonna be good. So that's honestly been taking up most of my time. I have also, exciting thing. Look at all that stuff. I had all the stuff delivered today to hang them up so you can kind of see like all of the frames from all the team challenges that we've ever done. And it actually quite worked out well because I mean it's off frame, you can't really see it, but it actually lines up with my calculations. So it's actually like a full frame, which is cool. Let me rotate the camera a bit. So, yeah. So that's where they all are. Look at that. Ain't that beautiful? Oh, it's so cool to see them all hanging up there. Yeah, there are many. There are many. I think because we also just posted them on ArtStation as well, right? So there are 75 in total, I think. Which is really, really cool. It is awesome to see them all on there, honestly. It kind of makes it feel real, you know? Like, and that's why I enjoy taking my time and really hanging them all up. Because otherwise they would just live on the website and on ArtStation but that doesn't really feel like anything to me, you know? Like now I can, even to my mom and dad, you know? Like, when they come in here and they're like, oh, what's that? Is that your work? It's like, I can explain to them like how it works, you know, like how the team challenges work, like that, like each frame is like 5 people working diligently for 5 weeks to get that stuff done, you know. And then if you explain to I feel like if you explain to it that way, 5 people for 5 weeks on a single frame on the wall, that becomes very impactful, you know. That's a whole lot of hours that are on that wall, which is really cool. So I do love it. Down again. As an art piece? Yeah! It is, Lucky Boy. Yeah, and like I said, that's not even my work, right? Which is just the crazy thing. It's just like something that we host and I get to be a part of it, but yeah, it's all of our community's work, which is really cool. I love celebrating it too. We need a BE meetup where participants can sign those frame pieces. God, we need to fly all over the earth for that. You know? That will be crazy. That will be sick. Yeah, it would be cool. I'm just wondering about like the logistics, right? Like that would be really, really cool. Or maybe what we can do for the next one is people need to give their signature on like being accepted to the challenge, right? So that we can then do the printing and do the frames and all that kind of stuff for them. But then we have to spend more money. God dang it. You're a huge part of it all to be existing, to be fair. Yeah, I know. But I don't want to take away, I don't want to give like the false appeal that is my work that's hanging there, right? I'm proud of it and I'm happy that I get to be a part of it and that I am a mentor for most of the teams and all that kind of stuff, right? But it is, I'm supporting those teams. Like it's not my work. But yeah, I love hosting it. You think you can see ours? Yeah, I think, where is it? Yeah, it's right here in the middle. This one, right? Ding, ding. Little mushroom. Honestly, it's pretty recognizable, right? With the shapes and the colors, even though it's like blurry as fuck on the stream anyway. Yeah. In a few years, you're gonna need more wall. Lily, I don't even think it's gonna be a few years. So let me point something out. Let's see. So from here till the end of the wall, that is the last challenge. So basically every challenge complete like a new row. Keep on doing it. I only have like 2 or 3 more rows until I need to remove all the books and all. So yeah, a year. Which is crazy. And if we have like a really successful challenge, it might just be like one, you know, which is crazy. Crazy to think about. Hello, Artyom. Yeah. What the heck? He has legs? I do. I'm not just like, I don't know, a future. I'm not just like a biomechanic man that's like half like car and like half human, you know? Would be sick though. Can driving around all day. VTuber Tim. Oh my god, the reveal, you know? Where like the VTuber facade breaks and you see like my real face. Why? Yeah. I was gonna ask a question like, why would you model this, you know? If you can be anything in the world, like why would you model this, you know? No. No, that was my art station. Ignore it. Where the hell did that even come from? Where the... Oh, there we go. Let me close those things down. The VTuber facade breaks and he's a dog? Oh my god. That would be sick. Like a dog using AI to talk and shit? Oh my god. Can you imagine? That would be freaky as well. But I honestly don't think that would even be to my detriment, you know? I think it would be... That would break the internet, I think. I think it's more mad that there's like work from 375 people collectively on that wall. Yeah. Yeah, right? And then if you... Okay, let's do a quick calculation, right? Because I love this kind of stuff. So if we then take 375 people, I know I actually don't know on average how many people, like how many hours people spend in work in a week, right? Because let's take an average to do like 20 hours, right? Which I think averages out pretty much. And then we times out by 5 because that's how long the challenge ends. It is we're getting close to like 30,000 hours on the wall. Like 30,000 collective hours of people working on the challenge. Just bonkers, you know? Freaking crazy. It is wild. Yeah, it is. Oh, I'm gonna completely pivot here. But I wanna ask you all a question. Because we got like a pretty select audience tonight. I'm gonna assume that most of the people that I see in chat are from the community anyway. What do we think about like moving? Okay, I'm gonna give a couple of options, right? Because again, I've been reflecting, I've been thinking about the year, I've been doing the yearly recap, so I've been reflecting on a lot of stuff. And I wonder, I'm thinking about 3 options, right? And this is, I feel like we talked about this last year as well. Do we keep Whip Wednesday live as we do it here on the Beyond Extend channel? Do we do it on my personal account, my separate account, and keep it going as like a live stream? Or do we take it internally and do we do it in Discord? Because I feel like last year... Oh, can I actually do a poll? That would be cool. Actually do a poll. So... Yeah, let me set something up here. We're gonna try this. We're gonna have some fun. So we're gonna do Beyond Extend as a live stream. We're gonna do personal account as a live stream. It's honestly more of a question from my sake for that one. Or we host them live in the Discord. So where should we host like future Whip Wednesdays? Okay, let's try this. How does a poll even work? Okay. Okay. Cast your vote, people. Gonna be interesting. Right. Okay, let's see. Top G is saying, I mean, on YouTube, it will help people watch the feedback again. Yeah, I will add the condition that even if we do them on Discord, they will be uploaded on YouTube or like another place where people can watch, can rewatch it. Because the whole thing is, even if people, with Wednesday right now is set up in a way where even people in different time zones can participate and they can rewatch the thing, right? Which is good. But what I was thinking is that even with the Discord, we can still upload that to like YouTube or whatever, right? So the rewatchability would still be inside the Discord too. Lily Sakin is saying it's also bringing in new people into the server. Well, here's the thing though, like I'm wondering, right? Because like I can look at some of the data, right? And if you look at the data of Whip Wednesday, right? The views always remain consistent. There's no growth, there's no potential growth, like it just remains like very static, right? Because if you think about it, like we put there's a lot of value for people that are participating in Whip Wednesday, but there's not necessarily a lot of value for people that just stumble on this YouTube channel and then are used to seeing the workshops and then see this, right? They're not going to stick around for this. That's just not what they're used to, right? So it could have the potential to bring in new people, but then I feel like the potential of that happening becomes smaller than some of the other content that we put out. I don't know, that's what I'm thinking. To be honest, right now, I feel like, to be honest, YouTube is just this. So you would have to think on what to do with this channel. No, so this channel actually has a different purpose for me. What I always wanted to do with the Beyond Extend channel is host stuff like the workshops, right? Or like really important big stuff, like for example, the team challenges, right? Where we host like the occasional live stream and make it like a big thing rather than a recurring thing, right? Because I do this every Wednesday now, and I think a lot of people see this pop up, and for a lot of people that are used to like the high quality content with the workshops and all that kind of stuff, I feel like it's more of a detriment than an actual invitation, if that makes sense. God of Gods is saying you need some short things to bring new people. Yeah, so we tried the whole short thing, right? And I think it is it does work. It is just currently the way that our content works is that it's not really made for shorts, right? And I also don't want to distort the content that we already make for shorts. We actually have a bunch of ideas what we could do for short content specifically. You don't get quality people though by shorts. Potentially. I mean that's more. I don't know. I feel like there's always. Well, to be honest, the way that I think about it, if you land on a short of an educational channel that is gonna do some talking about like game dev and becoming a game dev yourself, I feel like you then also have to appeal to people who want that for themselves, right? Because otherwise, I don't think we're going to engage with a lot of people that aren't interested in that, right? I don't know. I think we would get quality people just by the fact that we exist as like an educational channel, right? I mean, that's what I'm assuming that would happen. You could be right though. To be honest, that is what shorts are, with flashy edits and with music. Well, yeah, but so we have seen some potential with the workshops, right? But that means that it needs to be a segment that is almost made to be a short. And sometimes we have those, and some workshops just don't have them, you know, where we don't have that moment where it's like, oh my god, yeah, this is like good, you know. So yeah, it's kind of been a hit or miss. Whereas if you, for example, I'll bring up an example that we've been thinking about, right? The weekly tips format that I have been doing for, well, I have been doing in the past for like such a long time, that would actually be good to do in a short format, right? Because it is meant to be short by design. So then turning that into like a bit more engaging with video content and all that kind of stuff, that could be interesting, which is one of the biggest things that we've been talking about. So yeah, that's on the short side. That other noob, oh my god, you got a kick-ass name there, so yeah. Would anyone who joins with Wednesday in the server be able to talk, or only you and the person be reviewing be able to talk? Anyone who joins. That's a good question. I think that's chaotic, but I would not be against trying it. The main issue that I have though, struggling to change the screen name. It's Curse Middle School account making. I love it. You're gonna keep it. So like the only thing that I see that is like a downside to opening it up to everyone to be able to talk is that you need to have a way to control like how long it's gonna last, right? Because right now I have a lot of control over how long a segment or like a feedback section lasts, right? So I have control over the time that I spend with an individual person. Whereas the more open you make it, you know, like you kind of lose that control, because then, I don't know, sometimes you don't have any people pitching in, but let's say you have like 10 people pitching in, then it becomes like way longer. And we're running with like a consolidated time slot, right? So if we then get like, imagine that we have like an open forum where people can share their feedback, which could be really interesting, right? We would then need to find another restriction into, let's say we run over time, but let's say we run for 4 hours long and we still haven't gone through like half of the people. What do we do with like 50% of the people, right? It's like, do we just keep them for like next week? But then we just like keep enlarging the pool of people, right? So there's like a lot of interesting things that I'm kind of like throwing around in my head, which is why like last year what I tried to do was like having a one-on-one conversation with the person, right? Which I really did enjoy, and I think I kind of want to bring that back. But yeah, that's something that I definitely want to try. Which would be let's see, actually edits with music, which would be great for team challengers and advertising. Yeah, so I totally agree for the team challengers. Honestly, if you want like full transparency from my side, there's like two things that we still struggle with when it comes to the team challenges. That is social media, and I think last time specifically we struggled with mentor. This is something invisible to everyone who participated, but we really struggled with mentor communication. So that was something that we really struggled with. But obviously the visible side of things is like the social media stuff, right? There's so many missed opportunities when it comes to like really marketing the team challenges. And we have discussed this like time and time again, but every time, you know, something goes wrong, or I don't know, some person has to move different countries and it forgets to do a bunch of stuff, you know? Yeah. But that's something that we wanna definitely hire people for. Okay, but thanks all for voting. So yeah, looks like the votes are still like to keep it on the live stream for Beyond Extent. And then Discord is like a second runner up as well. Interesting. But yeah, God of Gods is saying, to be honest, you don't need to worry too much about quality for shorts. You can just clip the most important feedback stuff and just post it, because the way I see shorts, pushing more natural content. Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's not a bad idea, right? I mean, and I know that like a lot of other content creators do it that way too. It just comes down to time then, I guess. Just comes down to time. Yeah. It's definitely something that I want to explore more though. Because I feel like, and this is the weird thing, right? Consistency. Yeah. It is, consistency is one thing that I was going to bring up, is that all the stuff we're doing with Beyond Extent is me kind of doing it for the most part on the side, somewhat full time, right? And then we've got 2 other people that are helping out. But then the stuff that we set up kind of requires us to have like a bit more help when it comes to that, right? But then we obviously get like we've had a lot of help offers from the community, right? Which is amazing, and I thank everyone for it. And we've had a lot of people help in the past, which is awesome. But I also don't want to let them do that for free, right? So the income is the hampering factor at this point. But yeah, we'll see what we can do. We'll make it work. Yeah, I have some interesting stuff to say more about this when it comes to like the final year live stream. Well, it's probably not going to be a live stream. I'm probably just going to record a video and then share it inside of the community. But I have some interesting thoughts on that respect, because I've been thinking about it a lot. But yeah, thank you all so much for the input though. Yeah, it's really good to hear that, like, you know, shorts is something that I don't consume shorts. Like, I don't look at shorts at all. So it's really interesting for me to then hear other people saying like, oh, that's something that you need to look into, right? Because obviously even looking at like all of the numbers, even looking at like all of the numbers that we can see, like the analytics into YouTube, there is value to it. It's just, yeah, how do we go about it, right? Thanks for the poll. I love the thought into growing the community in a way that doesn't take away from it. What do you mean by that specifically, Josh? I mean, it's technically... But yeah, technically that's what I try to do with every decision that we make, right? I think sometimes we veer from the path, you know, like sometimes we add stuff on and then we kind of have to silo that off from the community because it doesn't make financial sense to otherwise do so, right? That's why we have like separate tiers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Hello, Bora. Good evening. Problem with social media, it's like a hamster wheel. Yeah, I think once we have a formula, right, then the consistency will kind of build itself up from there. It's just that the stuff that we've been trying, for example, with the shorts, with the workshops, it's just like we felt that it wasn't the right thing to do. Like, if we were gonna commit ourselves to making shorts, then just cutting them up from workshops didn't really feel like the way to do it in the way that we're currently doing workshops. But yeah. It is interesting. Well, you give it a lot of thought in where to expand and how versus let's get more people in no matter what or who, and then the community just gets very low engagement, it gets off the rails, is what I meant. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why we call ourselves like community builders, right? Because I think that's where the core of Beyond Extent comes from, right? Oh, there goes the camera. Let's see if the battery charges up in just a second. But yeah, like I was saying, like that's where the core of the community comes from, right? Like that's where we've gotten all the support from, and that's also yeah, the biggest thing that keeps us going, right? So yeah, let's switch on over to the Whip Wednesday stuff already. So yeah, I definitely try to keep that in mind a lot. Yeah, but I always love to hear more ideas. So if you ever have an idea, never feel ashamed or like never feel afraid to like reach out to me or just ping me a message, right? Saying like, "Hey, look, I just thought about X. Like, wouldn't that be a good thing?" Feel free to always let me know because we're always open. That is actually one thing that I also want to do before the end of the year. Maybe I was thinking about combining that with like the final year overview or something where I would basically I would ask for feedback, you know? It's been way too long since we've done that properly, where we have like a questionnaire go out to everyone from the community and just tell them what you want to see improved, what you think is like a good thing to focus on in the future, all that kind of stuff. I want to do something like that in the future. Well, no, like at the end of the year, not in the future, because that's too vague. Because we used to actually do that like every year. Or like at least twice a year or something. It's been a while. So that would be good. Yeah. Yeah, but thanks again for all the comments and insights. We'll see what the new year brings for live streams and stuff. Annual B valuations. God dang it. Yeah, and then we can talk about like, you know, your performance, you know? We'll give you like a performance review at the end of the year where you'll get like 10 minutes of one-on-one, and then I'll take a snapshot of your art station at the beginning of the year and a snapshot of your art station at the end of the year, and then roast you if nothing changes, you know? But then also completely ignore my art station that hasn't changed in like 5 years, you know? Like, we're not gonna even talk about that, you know? A Timothy annual performance review, if you will. A taper? I read that as TARP. Timothy annual review performance. Ah, dang it. That would have been good. A TARP? Put a TARP. Ugh. Josh, how dare you call me out like that? I have definitely done that before. Not only to hide Missy Geo, but also because I couldn't be bothered to like model whatever was underneath it, you know? So you just make like a quick walkout, you throw like a tarp on it, and then it's done. Oh yeah, fair. I think there's something wrong with my charger from like my camera. So I actually need to look if I can, because currently it's hooked up to my PC. I need to see if I can like hook it up to like an actual like, charger port. But yeah, exactly. A RIP camera. It couldn't survive until the end of the year. Ooh. The void is speaking to me. The black hole. This is, yeah, the Christmas miracle. The blackness. But yeah. I hope everyone's having a good Christmas, by the way. Just saying that for all the new people that joined. And yeah, honestly, yeah, it sounds so cliche, but like, thank you so much for all the support through like, not only the year, but like the years for like people, right? So, I don't know. Just, you know, people always talk about what they're blessed about, and that's what I feel blessed about every year. So thank you so much. All right. In the meantime, for people that are new, people that are jumping in, we're gonna get into some feedback right now, as you can see on the screen. If you are a part of Weird Wednesday, feel free to raise your hand, and then you can get to go first. If you are not a part of a community, feel free to ask any questions. Ask about my work in game development, environment art, or any career advice. Feel free to, yeah, ask a question, and then we can talk about it. Words and letter. Hello. See, yeah, I know what Christmas present Tim needs. What you mean? What you mean? I don't even know what I need. A new camera? No, see, yeah, it's not the camera, I promise. It's the battery. Yeah, definitely. No, you know what I do need? I need like a kick up my ass because I've been saying this for like ages, you know? I've been saying for like ages that I need to hook it up to like an actual charger, but then I keep forgetting to do it. Ugh. A new microphone? What do you mean? No, actually, if you hear like any echoing or any weirdness going on, it's actually not like the microphone. It is it's actually just a room. Like I've been hanging up like a bunch of stuff in this room and it still sounds really echoey. So we're gonna see if we can get some like acoustic foam or something like that. I laughed at the need of the kick of the ass for the Christmas. That got me. It is true though. Oh my god. I bring that up because also I was doing the yearly review and I did a list of what I want to achieve in 2025, and then I looked through it and like we've managed to do like half of it, you know? So it's like, ooh, okay. Which I am gonna talk about in the video that I'm planning and recording at the moment. And that's gonna be fun. Advice for solo game dev starting now, like in the age of AI. I know you might have talked about this 100 times. Not specifically about solo game devs though. Honestly, if you're a solo game dev and you're starting now, on a broad sense, I would say use AI, but use it for the stuff that you don't enjoy. Right? Because if you are a solo game dev and that is your goal, if you want to make your own games by yourself, an easy way to explore like using AI and like if you lean more to the artistry, which I'm assuming you do because you're here, then using AI to assist you with like coding or with like building your own tools or something like that, like that's something to definitely lean into, right? Yeah, that's it's very generic advice, right? But I would still do it because what I wouldn't do is try to do everything with AI, because the easier that's gonna become, right? Let's say it can already quote unquote make games. Let's not call them games, but it can generate stuff that kind of resembles games, right? If that becomes easier and easier, then a lot of people are gonna do that, and you're not gonna stand out, and you're gonna be fighting for scraps, right? Because when it's so easy, I was actually watching a video on this yesterday where there's a lot of YouTubers right now who just generate like endless, like World War II footage was the example that I was watching specifically, and no one stands out because they're all just generating like relatively similar stuff, right? And then they have to go crazy with like naming their thumbnails, and it's like, oh my god, they did this just to get people's attention, but you're actually not contributing meaningfully to like what people want to see, right? I think what you want to do at this point, if you are an artist and you're here now, or like you're a solo game dev, is actually double down on the human craft, right? Like you can kind of incorporate like AI tools into the process if you want to, but I think what's actually more interesting is having yourself stand out by potentially not doing it and going more handcrafted, and like how can you do that, right? And what does that look like for you? And then sharing your progress and your process online and all that kind of stuff, and just lean into what makes you human rather than trying to replace everything with like automation or AI or whatever you want to call it. Fairmore is saying I use AI to generate Python scripts for Blender, super useful. Yeah. And even with that, right? Like I used it a couple of times and it has big restrictions, especially if you wanna generate like complex stuff, you're always gonna struggle. And then that means that you will have to learn Python, you know, at a certain point. And Josh is saying, to your point, you'll also struggle to actually learn. AI might outsource a lot of the actual trial and error struggle that's needed to build expertise with workflows and artistic ability. Yes, I 100% agree, Josh. That is one of my biggest concerns is that people see it as a shortcut. They never have to do actual hard work until they have to, and then they don't know how to do hard work. And then it's like, wait, what? You know? Like, they don't know how to do it at that point. And to me, what I've learned through like all the years of artistry and, you know, like diving deep into rabbit holes that may have been relevant to the stuff that I was doing or maybe not, you know, like that all contributed to me becoming a richer person. If you all outsource that to a thing that just does all that stuff in the back end and you don't get to even see it or be a part of it, then I feel like you're losing out on a big part of the journey. Which is a shame, you know? Because I always say that like becoming an artist is as much as a technical achievement or like you need to get better at the craft as it is a journey of self-discovery, you know? Like what makes you tick as an artist, you can only do that by like running into the wall like so many times and then just being like, oh my god, maybe this is not how I should do it. Right? Yeah. But yeah, best of luck with becoming a solo game dev. I think it's an exciting path and you're gonna have to learn a lot. But don't ever stray away from your curiosity, you know? I feel like that helps a lot of people by just staying curious and following that, and that's gonna help you a lot. Right, so let's see. First one for feedback today. Top G is asking a couple of questions. Let me open Discord as well. First question is about the clothes. So you have like a bunch of clothes hanging here, and you're wondering what the best approach is for reuse instead of having to make like 7 different ones, right? You'll probably also have some clothes that fell on the ground as well. So what I would do in that case, if you really want to do like a lot of reuse, because you basically want to have variation in the clothes while being smart, right? First, I would look at color changes, right? So let's say, I don't know, let's say you make this pattern, and then you can change that pattern in Unreal. You basically you give it a mask, right? And everything that's yellow is going to be white in the mask. So that means that you can now color things inside of Unreal. And then you can change it to whatever color you want, right? So that means that it can have like a yellow one, you can have like a blue one down here, you can have a red one hanging from here, and they will all look like a little bit different. That's the first easy thing to do. It's not gonna take too much time. What I would also look into is just, you know, size, folding, and rotations. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have like a sheet, you know, and instead of already modeling it as if it was like on this clothesline, I would just model it as like a square sheet, right? With like a tileable or something like that, however you can approach it, and then simulate it on top of it. It's going to be a bit more expensive when it comes to topology. You can definitely decimate it to make it cheaper, right? But what this does is it now gives you the flexibility to, you can now have a pile of it, you can have it like draped on like a window, you can have as many variations as you want, right? Just from like whatever you do as like a base here, you can turn that into whatever you need for your use case. That's the way that I would do it, because yeah, you can do a lot with like just scaling things down a little bit, folding it up, simulating it, yeah, you can get a lot of variation through that way. Gotta go on to say, in great advice, I might have to find the balance myself. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's also part of the journey, right? Like, and even if we're not speaking about AI, right? Like, what kind of artist are you? Like, are you more technically inclined? Are you more artistically inclined? Like, do you like going for big natural environments? Do you like going for small intimate environments? You all have something unique, right? So when you're looking at like, hey, how do I position myself in the artistic market, right? Because we're all part of it, whether we want to be or not. How do you position yourself in that market, right? And taking like a very conscious step of like, first of all, like where do your interests lie? Like what does interest you? Like what do you gravitate towards in real life? You know, if you find yourself being very inspired by going on like, I don't know, like trips to Italy all the time, right? Because it's your favorite country ever. Like that might be an indication of what you could be doing or what you could be potentially integrating in your artistic life, right? So it's definitely something to think about, and that's where you have to have those like life experiences, you know. Right, let's give the camera a try. Already charged. Oh, okay. We're no longer in the red. I think we should be fine now. Absolutely. It took me a long time to ingrain learning well is learning hard. Um, is hard learning. Yeah. Yeah, and that keeps coming back, right? Because everyone, their brain tries to go for like the easiest option, right? So it's always a case of sitting down, preparing yourself, and then just doing the hard work, right? What if I'm a basement dweller? If you are a basement dweller, then you can still get your inspiration from somewhere else, you know? What's your favorite movies? What's your favorite games? Like, why? You know? If you, a lot can be explored about yourself if you just start asking the question why, right? Like, if you always gravitate towards like certain films, then ask yourself why, right? Like, why do you love, let's say, I don't know, traditional Japanese anime over like modern I don't know, like stuff like Lord of the Rings, right? Like modern medieval fantasy or something like that. Because even that could be an indication of something interesting, right? And yeah, like the other dude was saying, you could pull some great inspiration from basements. All that like moisture buildup, you know, like you get the crunchiness of the walls. Oh my god, so many nice textural details. You know, come on, let me scan that stuff already. Right, and then the second question from Moment to just go back. Secondly, anything from a foundational perspective I should be looking out for composition-wise? I think we talked about that last time. There's nothing really that stands out to me this time. I think most of the stuff got already fixed, especially because you got like all the arches and all that kind of stuff in. It gives a better read of the whole environment. So I don't think so. I think you're good to go, and you can still just squeeze and do small changes along the way, right? Iteration is a part of the process. So if you notice something is off, you can always go back. Or like make tweaks. Not go back. Cool. Thank you for sharing your work. OG. So yeah, saying back rooms are in. Are they? I felt like, well, are they still? I know that they were in because I used to love watching them as well. I'd be curious if they're still in though. But yeah. Right. Who was next? So Josh. Josh. Wait, Josh. Josh, no, you're too late, buddy. You're too late. That's why I didn't see you in the list. Oh, God. There might still be some like time zone confusion going on there. And we'll see if we can squeeze you in at the end. Let's see. We'll continue with some other people first, and we'll squeeze you in at the end, Josh. That's okay. Oopsal, no worries if you can't. No, we'll see. There were a few really good horror games last year that were Backrooms themed. Oh yeah, I think I saw like a couple. And then Swanboy is saying that they saw a recent job posting for a Backrooms game. I feel like if you're still making one at this point, I don't know. Is that risky? Maybe, you know? I wouldn't be doing it. Right. Okay, let's have a look at some other people. Stefan is next in the running. So let's have a look. You think so too, Swan? Yeah, it's you gotta be quick with that, you know? Like whenever you follow like the hype of something, you gotta make sure that you're on time to catch it, because otherwise the wave is just passed you by. Cool. Let's see, Stefan, 2 questions. Permore is saying, ooh, very cool lighting. Right now the trend is friends slop games. What are those, Swan? Can you give me an example? It is risky unless you make something crazy on top of it. Well, I don't think even, because you have to look at the foundation, right? If the foundation is like backrooms with like X, then it's gonna be, the backroom part is always gonna be up front, right? So you have to be able to like capitalize on that, because anything else that you add on top of it, it's just oh yeah. So Peak, Lethal Company, Repo, co-op games. Yeah, I was imagining, I think the last one was like RV Daria, right? That was the last big one. Because I felt like Peak came and went, Lethal Company came even before that, and Repo was even way longer before that. I feel like it's also stuff like Megabonk and Ball Pit and what was that like slot machine game that I forgot the name of? Like those feel like they're current games. Well, I guess more current games. So it's interesting. It feels like this is what I've been saying. There's like a massive revival, or like, I don't know. There's so many good indie games. Jesus, it's crazy. Because even if you have a decent game now, right? Like, totally serviceable. It actually has a good gameplay flow and all that kind of stuff. Standing out from the crowd right now is so hard because there's so many good games coming out. It's crazy. Right, Stefan was asking, how are you feeling about the overall tone of the new lighting and how are the assets going together? I think on the second part, like the assets are going together fine, right? Because it is a sneaky question where you ask 2 questions at once. I saw you there, Stefan. So I think that's fine. I think the lighting, it is still too warm for my taste. So what I imagine it to be, because I'll explain why I think it's too warm, right? Because most of the colors in the scene go to the warm tone. You did some color grading which diminishes like some of the green and some of the blue metally tones a little bit as well, I'm assuming. And then also the light itself is like quite orange. So and I think we talked about this before, I always want to see like a little bit more color complexity so that we have a contrast between the warmer tones and the colder tones. So literally all I've done here is I infused the shadows with blue. Right? So that's all I've done. And you can kind of tell that like it balances out like some of the warmer tones that we get from the textures and the lighting and all that kind of stuff. And it gives us like a little bit, it pulls us back into like the realism specter. Because otherwise it just feels like it's too one-sided. in terms of colors. So that's what I did. I just injected like blue in the shadows. Just did that with like a color balance. I think I did like 50% or something like that. But it's arbitrary, right? Like a little bit of, I don't know. This could even be ignored. But that can be something done in post-processing. So that's what I would do. That's still my recommendation to follow because it kind of balances everything out a little bit more. Now, to your second question, I've decided to also enable path tracing, which gives me better result than Lumen, but not by a huge amount. Is that a bad thing or a good thing for the portfolio? Well, anything that gives you like a visual improvement is good for the portfolio, right? Full stop. Now you're using path tracing. Does that decrease your performance? Is that gonna be even realistic to do when it comes to a game scenario? Potentially not, right? Doesn't make sense in a lot of cases right now. But you are not going to be like an engine programmer, right? Like trying to optimize like how path tracing works itself, or even a lighting artist that has control over like path tracing and how to optimize the path tracing layer itself, right? So it's almost like whenever like ray tracing itself came out, that people were making realistic renders with like ray tracing. I think that's fine because you are not in charge of like trying to optimize whatever technology they're using, right? What is going to be important is that the underlying fundamental, well, in this case, the input, right, which is like the models, the textures, and the materials are going to be good so that the technology that we add on top of it, in this case, path tracing, makes it look even better, right? Because if let's say, if we go with another example where like you use path tracing to try to compensate for really shitty textures, that is going to emphasize that your textures are just like, that we need to do more work, right? But that's not the case here. Your textures are really good, and just the renderer that we add on top of it, like kind of, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I also added here, like, nope, it's totally fine. In AAA, like lighting isn't your job anyway. So I wouldn't really be worried about it that much. Yeah, as long as you make stuff look good as an artist, I think that's where you should focus your attention, you know? And if that means using like tool X over Y, or like, I don't know, technology X over Y, it's all just like stuff that we add on top, right? Yeah. Your stuff is looking really great though, Stefan. Really nice attention to detail as well. Shout out to TD, who did a workshop as well for us. Dylan Abernathy, he has a great workshop about how he approaches assets, and he also has a full tutorial on how to make this. I'm even imagining like this exact typewriter as well. So if you're interested in how to create something like this, Dylan Abernathy has a great tutorial waiting for you. Let me actually share that. Let me give me a shout out to him as well. Let's see. Creating detailed props for games. That's a good one as well, which is free. Free tutorial. Is that the one right here? There we go. Let me close some additional stuff here. There we go. So if you want to check out the tutorial on how to create like something like this typewriter here, you can go and support Dylan's work. Give him a like. I think the tutorial is free anyway. So yeah. Cool. Thank you, Stefan. I hope that was helpful. And yeah, like really good looking stuff. I like the additional, all the detail that you added on the props, looking really, really solid. I think you got like a great piece on your hands. And yeah, awesome work, man. Fun fact, Dylan Abernathy graduated from the college I'm in right now. That is awesome. That is cool. It is always interesting to hear like who your alumni are from the same school. I have like a bunch of people a bunch of people that I graduated with, like in the same class, are now like pretty high up at like Larian, right? Because we're a school from Belgium, so it has like close ties to like those people. But it's also interesting to kind of see like how many people spread out and like work in like different nations across the world. Because I mean, in our case, like the picking of jobs was like relatively restrictive, you know? Like we didn't have like a lot of jobs, like industry jobs um in Belgium. So yeah. Would a full environment project be more where you want to show off performance management in your portfolio? Examples given, managing the draw calls, shader complexity, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, it can be done on like a singular asset as well, right? But usually the most important stuff that we want to see is how you use your UVs, how you use your textures, how you use your materials, right? Because that is the stuff that we manage, right? So that's where we kind of go into like draw calls, right? Because yeah, if we add like additional materials, then that's going to introduce like new draw calls and all that kind of stuff, right? Same for the shader complexity. You know, you could technically do everything in one shader, but then is that good for the shader complexity if we then decide to do it in one, or if we do it in multiple shaders? I would worry less about shader complexity, because every engine kind of has like their own way of working, right? Showcasing that you know the workflow is going to be more impactful than showcasing that you can squeeze down your shader complexity just a little bit, right? Because for example, the way that I've always done it in different engines is always going to differ which engine you use, right? In some engines you would do this workflow compared to that workflow, right? Sometimes you would actually prefer to have more materials that are like less complex, and then sometimes you would actually have like one master material that would take care of like everything for you. Right, or showing off your decision to use one workflow versus another part in the environment. Example, world aligned versus UV aligned tiling for architectural models. Yeah, I mean that can definitely add to the benefit, right? I would kind of squeeze that in to your breakdown somewhere, because honestly, I can. If you tell me like, hey, look, for this asset I used X, let's say world aligned UVs, right? That is usually all the context that I need to then even think about like if that is the right choice or not, right? And then your decision to go with that workflow um can add like a little bit of like interesting conversation on top. But usually those conversations, those more nuanced conversations, they happen when you're actually doing the interview rather than on your portfolio. So I would just focus on presenting all the data, right? But then you can kind of talk more about your choices as to why when it comes to like, let's say a blog post or something where you have a conversation one-on-one with an artist from a company, let's say. Fair. That is a good question. So do you have a favorite game engine? I mean, in a way, Unreal Engine is still my favorite engine. But also, there's so many amazing tools that I used in some of the other engines where like Unreal Engine doesn't even come close to them just yet, right? Like for the longest time, like Unreal Engine like didn't even have like a proper way to manage like working with multiple people on like large open worlds, right? They just didn't have that, which is crazy, right? Unreal Engine 4 didn't have that. Like I think they introduced it in like, I don't know when, I think it was like 5.2 or something like that, where they started supporting like a lot of open world stuff. Which is interesting, right? Because I mean, a lot of people were using it for that use case already, just didn't support it yet. And then you go to, let's say, like if you work for Ubisoft, like all those, let me see, well, yeah, all of those engines, depending on which engine you use and which branch, they all have really good support for open world stuff by design, right? Because they're built from the ground up to build open world games, so that's what they're doing. So it's almost like if I was making like an open world, I would use a different engine than Unreal Engine, you know, because of the tool set. But obviously, you can't, right? I think that's where Unreal Engine kind of has the benefit, because it is open. Everyone uses it. So if you have an issue, someone else has run into it already, right? Where like the internal engines, what you'll have to do often is you'll have to do a lot of trial and error, and then maybe talk to this one specific person that has also encountered it, but he might be on holiday, you know? Whereas with Unreal Engine, you can just look stuff up, which is cool. So yeah. Yeah. And then, yeah, all the game engines kind of worked with their own little quirks, you know? Which is really good if, let's say, for example, there's a lot of engines that have like a lot of really great built-in tools that have support for Max, right? So they have like a strong link between Max and the engine, right? But if you don't use Max, like myself, I use Blender, then it becomes a hindrance, right? Because now I need to get stuff from like Blender to Max to then get into the engine, and it becomes like an extra step. Whereas if you use Max, that becomes a strong suit, right? And there's a fair few engines that I used that actually still have that connection, right? Even though companies are more and more trying to get away from it, right? The tool set that they built over like a long period of time and invested a lot of money into is still Max centric for the most part. Which is also where the whole conversation of like, Blender is not industry standard, blah, 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 that comes from that, right? Because a lot of the tools and a lot of the investment actually went into Max before Blender was even, I mean, it was quote unquote usable, but like nowhere near to the same degree that we use it now, right? So I would call like Blender like industry standard now, but it's almost like you have industry standard, right? Where you can use it to do industry level work, but it's not industry integrated yet. There's a difference there. Anyway, side tangent. Yeah, thank you for that question. I think very interesting question to think about. Yeah. God, this also makes me think about like some engines that I've used that back in the time when I used them, didn't even have like basic features. So yeah, there were games where, for example, so that has completely changed right now, right? Like that's no even like a relevant conversation. But back when we used it, we had to get like an asset into the game, you had to type like the names in like a couple of different notepads before the engine would like register it. And those notepads files, they were shared between the whole company. So if I was editing it, no one else could import anything, right? You were blocked until I then submitted it, and then someone else could like import stuff. It was also sensitive by line, so that meant that if I wanted to, let's say I added like a block of like 20 assets, and I forgot one asset, and I wanted to add like a 21st asset in there, I couldn't do it because it would read it like sequentially, line by line. So it would break the whole flow and actually break the build for everyone in the company. Which is interesting, right? Again, no longer the case, but it is interesting that you get to work through some of those phases. And everyone in the chat here who is going to be a part of like games industries is going to have those are gonna have those experiences, right? Like when you work on your first game, and let's say you work on like Unreal Engine, you're gonna have this experience like 10 years down the line because technology evolves so fast. Right, next one in the list is Megval. Just a small update from last week. I worked on the wear and tear from the door through texturing. I was wondering how this reads currently. How does the paint weathering look now to compare to previously? So, I mean, there's definitely some improvements to be made. You have made improvements, but I think just looking at the way that this looks and your ambition to make this like a unique portfolio piece, I think you will have to sculpt it. Honestly, I kept going back and forth last time, but I think time to sculpt this door. it's going to be way easier, especially if you want to showcase it as like an individual asset on your portfolio. You need to get that additional detail in there. Because I don't think like just going the way that we're going about it now is not going to be enough. And then I also highlighted some like interesting things to look for, right? You need a normal map there? No, I think there is a normal map. I think it's just if you want to get those like really interesting like silhouette, like not even silhouette, like those breakups in the mesh and all that kind of stuff, right? You need geometry. I think, yeah, you need way more than you're currently given, because it does. I mean, maybe it's not showing it off that great. Like you can see, it kind of has a normal map. It's just, it is just honestly not great. I added a couple of interesting little references, and I think that's also like if you really want to push it to that quality bar, we need to have good references and we need to be able to replicate them like closer than we do now. Because it almost feels like the paint layer that we have currently here, it doesn't even feel like a real door, you know? We went to like a DIY shop today and we were just looking at like different wood panels and all that kind of stuff. And it almost feels like, you know, like pressed wood, and then they put like the top layer to make it look like it's real wood. And then that part like kind of peeled off. That's kind of the way that this door feels right now. It kind of feels like it's a fake wood on top of like, you know, like wood paneling just like squished together. Which is obviously not what you want to have when you want to have like a portfolio piece that is separate from the environment, right? So yeah, I added some things here, you know, like cool stuff like this. And then you have like this cool gradient where you see like the texturing. You can see like the door slanted in its frame. It's like some really cool texturing here because that's where the moisture collects. Same thing here. This gradient, you know, where it like fades, so you have like, you know, like a lot of saturated colors here, and then they just like desaturate, especially near the bottom, because that's where like all the wear and tear comes from. And that's what you want to see, right? You really need to, yeah, it's attention to detail that really makes those pieces stand out. Which if you want, and that's what led me to the conclusion of here saying it's time to sculpt the door, because I don't think you're gonna get there by just trying to force it in the texturing alone. I think we need more than just texturing. Yeah. But you are saying thanks, Sam, and Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, McVal. I hope you're having a good one. Right, so that was a quick one. I think, yeah, we got to that point where it's like we tried it, we gave it a good try, but I think, yeah, I think we're gonna need to go for extra detail. Right. Let's see. Offic is asking, so Offic changed the light, got like a new close-up shot as well, which is good. Happy to see that because I was scared for my life last week. I didn't want to see like the density of the scene, right? That was going to be very tricky to pull off. I'm not sure if it's too soon to ask for another critique after only a week, but I'd love to know when the right time is to ask for feedback and when I should just keep working. Honestly, this is up to everyone individually, right? Like whenever you're stuck with something, you can just talk to me, right? Like that's why this is here. My question for this week is, I'm modeling a complex piece with a ton of small assets. Should I be creating the high poly and baking as I go, or while I'm still shaping the model? This is a very, very quick fix. Anything in game dev, anything in environment art is iterative. You don't need to finish step 1 before you can do step 2, you know? Sometimes it's actually really beneficial to do a test bake to see if like the most complex thing in your asset is working and if it's reading really well. And then you can still do the rest of it, right? Because what might cost you like a little bit of time in the beginning, right? Because you have to do the setup and all that kind of stuff. You have to bake it. might help you get like really good context for how you have to do the rest of the asset, where it might actually save you time in the end. Okay? So yeah, I would just think about it in this way. Everything is iteration. As soon as you have any question like, hey, I don't know how this is gonna look, try to get it in a way to get it to look. Try the quickest way of executing it so that you can get it to look the way that you want to look, right? Just do a couple of test runs. So yeah, quick couple of questions, but yeah, great progress, Ofek. Thank you. And then we come to you, Fair. Good to see you again. Past 2 weeks, I've been working on some tiling textures and materials. I spent a lot of time making my first trim sheet. Hell yeah, how is that going? How was your first trim sheet experience? And let's see. Ignore the lighting. I've been making changes and it's broken now. That's fine. Then we get onto the questions. I don't know what's the best way to texture the concrete floor tiles. Should I use the tiling texture plus edge decals, or maybe bake 3 of them down and repeat multiple times? Both of them can work. It is honestly like your question of unique or tileables plus decals. Most of it comes down to what is the easiest way to get to a good quality result, right? Usually, and we're actually gonna talk about this in your second question actually. So for example, in this question, right, because you have like a piece of wall here that is like, hey, this exposed brick, how do I do that? Like, what workflow do I use for that? Then it's the choice between like a parallax occlusion map decal, right, like a POM decal to kind of get that, or vertex paint. And my choice was vertex paint because you already got that set up, right? So the only thing that you'd have to do at that point is to make a base brick tileable that you can then use as like the bottom layer, and then you can just paint that in with vertex paint, right? Which also means that gives you the flexibility to potentially do that in other areas as well, right? So in this case, it's really clear that a decal, you would have to set that all up, you would have to set up a material, blah, 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 right? Whereas vertex paint, you already got that set up anyway. So that's why my choice here was a little bit more clear cut, because it's like, hey, vertex paint, we've already got that, you know, so we might as well just build that in there. The only thing that I added here is that if you want to add some sort of depth or yeah, kind of fake it, and you're not using nanite displacement, which leads you to use like parallax occlusion mapping, that can be pretty complex when it comes to intersections of multiple layers that have parallax occlusion mapping. In this case, we might be okay because you are trying to blend something that has like a lot of height, right? Like bricks, with something that barely has any height, plaster. So you might be able to get away with it, and you don't even need POM on the plaster. Now we look back to question 1. Because in here, I have less visibility of what you've already set up, right? Because if we already have a tileable for concrete, which I don't think you do, and you also don't have like edge decals set up in your environment, I think, then it is honestly the fastest way to potentially do it unique. Right? So that would be the thing that I would lean into. Because honestly, for most things, it's honestly easier to do it like just one-to-one, really strip away like all the technical complexity and just execute it as like a unique asset, and then you've got it, right? Whereas with other things, you then have to think about like, okay, I need to set up a tileable, which is easy, but then also I need to then blend that tileable with like an edge decal, and how do I need to bake an edge decal without getting normal map issues and all that kind of stuff, right? You're adding technical complexity, where sometimes you can just like really quickly sculpt like a couple of concrete tiles, bake them down, and then you got it, right? It's also easier. Yeah. Sorry, Fair. Is there anything you wanna ask another question about, or anything that you wanna interject there? Give you just a minute. But yeah, yeah. In general, I feel like that's usually the way that I tend to approach things. Where it's like, if it is easier and quicker to do it with X instead of Y, then usually I go for like workflow X, right? Um, and that depends on a whole bunch of factors, right? So for my example, when I'm working on my when I used to work on my medieval scene, what happened a lot was, hey, I need something made out of wood. I'm just going to use a trim sheet that I already have lying around, right? There's no point in me like making a new one. Yeah. And then at a certain point, what you can do is you just become more attuned to what you can use in certain situations when you start from scratch, right? Or with stuff that you already have lying around anyway. It becomes easier and easier the more you do it. Right. I think Eden was here as well. I don't think I even finished this feedback, did I? I don't think I did. Okay, so let's have a look at Eden's feedback. Where are we? So I've been texturing this week, and I'm slowly noticing my texture style shift from something that's PBR, think Palia, to now something that's fully hand painted, think League. And I'm sat here wondering what to do. Oh wait, my bad. I'm back. I was feeding my ducks. No, not feeding of the ducks. I'll give you some time to like rewind a little bit. I think that's a feature on YouTube, right? You can just go back a little bit and then let me know if you have any additional comments. Yeah, I hope the ducks are doing well. That's cute though. In the meantime, so I was reading Eden's message. I'm sat here wondering what to do. What I need to do to the sword to emulate that style, as all the feedback I've been given is to work on the values and so forth. But I feel like now I need some direction on blending, or maybe an idea how to total line of my style to Riot style. Well, so I think it's very difficult, right? So this is actually, I think, an interesting lesson on how to ask better feedback, because, and this is not just me saying it about like this post, right? But I feel like what happens here is that you're basically asking me to be familiar with Riot's art style and then give you feedback on how that relates to your art, right? So I was actually struggling with this before the stream because I have a broad sense of Riot's style, right? But Riot's style doesn't even have a style because it differs very much from like Legends of Runeterra versus like versus, let's say, Valorant, right? Two same games, games made by the same company, and they have a vastly different style. So it's like, okay, where do I lean on, right? So I decided to lean on something like the Ruined King, which is still in like the League of Legends style. And then I need to actually go in and look at what I can notice in their style that is different from what I'm seeing from yours, right? And that's why I kind of didn't finish this completely. So we're gonna have to do some stuff live here. But what I can already tell here is that first of all, what I noticed was that all of the designs, right? So this is not necessarily talking about like your texture style, but all their designs are chunky, right? Because if you think about like the way that they usually present their characters and their weapons on the screen, it's going to be third person and they're pretty small on the screen, right? Because they want you to give like a broader overview. Let's say a League of Legends, you need to have battlefield knowledge, right? So your character is going to be small on the screen, which means that in order to compensate for that, they'll give you like large weapons, right? I'm not sure about like the Ruined King, really, but let's say in League of Legends that's the case. Where if something like this happens, then let's imagine that we zoom out. It becomes harder and harder to read because it is less chunky, right? So that is already where your style from the chosen concept that you went for kind of deviates a little bit from like Riot style, right? What you kind of have imagined, or what the difference is between the two. Now, that's about the shapes and all that kind of stuff. So what can we actually see about the texturing, right? First thing here that we talked about was actually bold shapes, right? So very chunky, very visibly like solid shapes, right? So that it increases the readability of stuff in the distance. Next things that I saw is the color complexity, right? So if we actually zoom in here, you can see that this gold or bronze kind of material, but because I think this is like a sea themed character, we can kind of see some like moss and some like oxidization or something like that happening, but it's very subtle, right? It's very subtle, but it adds a color complexity that it otherwise wouldn't have if it wasn't there, right? So that's an interesting way of thinking about it already, where usually what happens, and it's, you can kind of see it here, where it's not only like shades of brown, but they try to add that like color complexity in it, where it's like a warm tone, but then also some colder tones, right? In some of the areas where you can see like some purples and some blues coming in as well, which again adds to the color complexity of the asset. Same thing here, warm, and then you got like the green tones kind of come in to kind of add some like color complexity there too. And what I did notice in the handle, for example, is that the handle feels really chunky, right? Like really chunky and bold, and you can really read the silhouette even from like a relative big distance. You can see that there's still like a lot of silhouette breakup, right? Where if we even compare to like what we can see here, it starts to become difficult to read it as like separate things. It almost becomes like one large mass, right? So we can enhance that by doing two things, like exaggerating some of the geometry if needed, but also accentuating it more with the texturing, right? Because that's what they're doing here too. So you've got like a couple of different sections where they kind of have the core. Oh, hello, Arvid. Good to see you. How are you doing? Merry Christmas. So you kind of have the core, right? Which is like, actually shrink this down a little bit. So you kind of have the core, right? And then you have like the edge, and those two things, like they really stand apart from themselves, right? You can actually see that this top edge is sometimes really heavy. And the reason why that is the thing is just because we want to make it more visible, right? We want to add that like separation between the main body and the edge here. Right, so that's something that could be introduced here as well, where you just play around with some of the silhouette. Right, and then we go like a little bit chunkier. Then also try to add variation, right? And we can kind of see that the silhouette of this becomes like way more readable already. Another thing that I also noticed is that you have some like exterior damage happening on your sword, but it doesn't really translate to anywhere meaningfully, right? So it just feels like, oh, this is a dent. Cool. where is that dent going, right? Because like I almost imagine it to like continue across like the other way. Like at least connect somewhere, you know? And that's what we're seeing here as well, right? You can kind of see that you have this dent. So this is what you have in your case, right? You do this, cool. But in your case, this is what's missing, right? The connection where we see the sword slashing and then like scraping a top of the top of the sword, right? And it makes it more interesting to look at than just like a dent that's happening here. Yeah, but definitely, yeah. If there was one thing specifically about the texturing, it would be, you know, those additional accents, like the additional dents and scrapes and all that kind of stuff. But I think the main thing by far is the color complexity. That's definitely something to focus on. Yeah, it's also very common for like concept artists to do this, right? Like having the highlights in one way, and then having the shadows be the contrasting color, right? And like making it rich by adding like purples and blues and all that kind of stuff in it. Yeah. See what you mean? But yeah, like I would definitely, you know, because this is like me 5 minutes like scrambling across the internet just to see if I could find like some interesting stuff, right? But yeah. It's like a very quick off the cuff, but you can see that it's really interesting and complex in terms of the layering and the different materials, right? Yeah. Yeah, basically, I mean, this is a good question, right? Like, I mean, apart from maybe like Riot style, right? Like, let's call it just like League of Legends style. But that is actually basically what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to answer that question for yourself just in a visual way. Salzy, hello, hello. How are you doing? Merry Christmas. Not gonna lie, this is the same reference that I have. Yeah, I think that's a good start, right? Just see, like, you really analyze whatever's happening. I also just noticed, like, you know, like the slight blue greenish highlight as well. But that highlight is not continuous, right? Like, it kind of continues. Let me actually get rid of some of this stuff. The highlight actually doesn't continue like all the way around, right? Like it's trying to accentuate. It's trying to accentuate like some of the more important areas. And then you can also see that there's a gradient happening as well. So the further we go up the blade, like the darker it becomes too. And those things, like they're really interesting to just try to break down, right? Yeah. That gun again, I feel like I've seen that gun everywhere from X to R Station. Is it from a new game? It is from the Ruined King, like from League of Legends. It's honestly all I know about it. I just had to look it up for like reference purposes, but shows how much I am involved with like anything online these days. Yeah, good to see you here, stranger. Merry Xmas, yeah. Merry Xmas to you too. You're playing that game right now? Nice. I wish people would do something new. It was cool the first time I saw it. What do you mean? In terms of just like the texturing style, or what do you mean by that? Oh, fair. Did you hear what I had to say about your work? Because we already went over it. Sorry. You might have to skip back a little bit. Eden is saying, and I agree. I'm asking myself how much I want to take versus how I want to do for myself. Um, well, I think there's certain elements. Um, there's certain elements that are definitely worth taking, right? The color complexity, definitely. What we talked about in the beginning, like the chunky shapes. I think I think it's too late for that now, right? You might be able to do like a little bit, but I wouldn't stretch that. But definitely focus just on the texturing and making it more complex than it currently is, right? The color complexity for sure, because I can guarantee you that that is going to be a thing that you're going to see, especially in hand painted styles. Like that basically is a literal translation from like a lot of concept art stuff. So that is definitely going to help. Um, and then yeah, Salzy is asking, so I wanted to ask you something. What niches or paths have you personally come across or know that utilize 3D environment art outside of games and movies, etc.? Um, Personally, none. I mean, all all my experience has always been in games. You know, so personally, zero. I do know people that use like 3D modeling and 3D scanning in like the medical field. You know, they do like oh, what's the best way to say this? Like just like 3D representations for like not only presentations but also like surgeries themselves. Um what are some other ones? I mean ArcViz, that's a common one. I feel like the really interesting one with 3D environment art is how it's merging with films. I think that's one area that's really interesting. Um a person a person from our community a while back transitioned from being a traditional 3D environment artist to working on like live sets, like virtual production. That stuff is super cool to me because I have no clue about it, you know? But yeah, other than that, got no clue. It's a good question for the people in the chat though. Like, what have you come across that is not your stereotypical like go into AAA stuff, but that still uses the skills of environment art? Do do do. In the meantime, let's see. Swan is asking a quick question regarding my glass for my lantern I'm modeling. Should it be double-sided or just one-sided? I'm planning to emit light too. I mean, if you're gonna see the back of it, probably double-sided, right? It's probably easier. Thanks so much for your insights. I find the games industry or movies very daunting to get into, and looking at other paths that incorporate 3D environment art creation. Oh, daunting to look at. Okay. Well, so in my personal opinion, I I think that those are like the two biggest already established industries to get into. So I think that it's actually more daunting to go into something that is not as established and trying to make it there. You know what I mean? Right, let's say you go in like a really niche field as let's take like the medical rendering for example, right? Like that is going to be even more daunting because there's less information, there's less people to talk to, right? Or I don't know. At least that would be my perception. That's the way that I think about it. Where like if you want to know anything about like video games or like movies, it's just like it's right there. Like there's so much stuff online. Oh my god. But that does mean that if you find a niche that is like underserved, right, and doesn't have like enough creative people in it, that might help you get in and potentially even be more profitable than games or movies, for example. May not go back to modeling, says Eden. No, that's fine. I think that's also why I was saying like it's a little bit too late for that, right? So I wouldn't expect you to necessarily, but I think the color complexity definitely. Um, Yeah, Salzy, that is an interesting just point by itself, right? Like, all I've ever heard from everyone is how hard the games industry is to get into. And while that is true, do not let that stop you from trying to, right? Because, I mean, I don't know what the best way of asking this is, but like, do you want to make games for a living? You want to be a part of that process? Because if the question is yes, then it doesn't matter how hard it is to get into the industry, right? You'll have to make it work. Because I mean, that's the way that I usually think about this, right? Because if someone would have told me like how hard it is to get in the industry, and then let's say I get persuaded to do something else, then why why should I care how hard it is? I just want to do it, you know? And sure, could it be difficult? 100%. Is it going to be hard? Is it going to require you to do like a lot of work? For sure. But if you really plan to make it, then that's what you have to do, right? To me, the way that I look at those things, it's like, is it going to be hard? Cool. I'm going to learn a bunch of stuff. And what I need to do to get there just becomes like a checklist, you know? And how hard it is doesn't even factor into the equation. I mean, maybe that's a bit naive, but like sometimes like a bit of naivete like can really help you, you know? And I've always said this, right? Like I'm like a 3D Neanderthal. Like I didn't really ask for anyone's permission. I was just doing stuff, you know? I was just running into that wall. I was learning by making mistakes, and the end result of that is that is that I became self-sufficient, right? That has downsides to it as well. For example, I would never ask for anyone's feedback, which then stifles my growth, right? But that also has the benefit that I would never ask for anyone's permission to do something, right? So it's like, it's almost like, have you ever played like Project Zomboid, where whenever you pick a skill, there's going to be a downside to it, you know? You have to balance them out. That's kind of what this is as well. To be honest, it's weird. One side, it's so hard to the point people think it's not worth it. Then I see so many people get on my LinkedIn, and I'm like, so there's jobs. There are jobs. The thing that I don't like is the scaremongering, right? Like I will agree that it's hard, but that doesn't mean that it's not doable, right? And I've always said that everyone that wants to get in games can get in games. It is just you have to be willing to fight for that, you know? It's not going to be a given. It's not going to be like, "Oh, you want to be in games? Okay, let me just open the door and like in you go." You know? It's yeah, that's also not going to happen. It's easy to go down the rabbit hole of who's wrong and who's right. I mean, so here's the thing, right? Like you said it yourself. If you see a lot of people on your LinkedIn getting jobs, that is data. Data is ambiguous. Data is not right or wrong. Data just is, you know? So if you see people getting jobs and everyone's telling you that there's no jobs, then the data is right there, you know? Like a bunch of my friends just got jobs. What are you saying there's no jobs? Like I see people going in right now. And that is honestly, in a lot of cases, way more helpful that you... I mean, obviously, I appreciate people coming in here and asking, because it's kind of a shortcut to the data, right? But sometimes it's also good to just look at the data yourself, right? I mean, yeah, the industry has shrunk, but also there's like a bunch of juniors that got like jobs, right? Because everyone has an opinion because we're humans. Yeah, but like it's sometimes worth asking where that opinion comes from, right? Because if that opinion is rooted in fact and data, then that's more trustworthy than just someone who's saying like, "Oh no, it's hard to get into it." You know, you're not going to get a job. I mean, I'm making it very black and white now. Because I think, in my personal opinion, that is doing a disservice to whoever you're saying it to. Right? It's like I get that you're trying to prepare people, but also there's a point where it becomes almost, yeah, what is the best way of saying it? It becomes just not productive, you know? Because we do need new people, and we do need juniors. It's just, yeah. Yeah, it is an interesting question, though. I mean, we talked about this a lot, like in our community as well, right? Where how do you give that sort of advice to people? Because I think also, like, so if we zoom out again, right? So if we zoom out again, right? Like if you are a determined person, okay, let's just focus on me, right? Like, if you tell a person like myself, hey, there's no jobs, you shouldn't even try it, I will be like, I'll show you, these other people have gotten in, there must be a way. And that's a good outcome, right? There's also another outcome where if you tell me like, hey, I wouldn't even bother, that I give in and I don't know, I guess I'll do something else then, right? I may have been a victim to the whole perpetuated opinion of there's no jobs, this industry is awful. Yeah, especially the second part, you have to be careful with that. If they say this industry is awful, they are a little bit cynical, you know? You gotta take that into account. If you have someone who can't separate their own emotional state from like how the industry is doing right now, data-wise, like objectively, that is you have to be careful with that. And again, like it's not like I'm always this like unemotional person that never let his like personal opinions like influence like the stuff that I say on here, right? That would be disingenuous as well. But I will still, even when I'm highly emotional and I just went through some like horrible shit at work, let's say, I will still take that into account when I give someone else advice on how to get into the industry myself, because I will always remember when I got into the industry myself, and when I got to work on my first game, and when I got to release that first game, you know, it is fucking awesome. And I do not want to take that away. Because I've also seen, and this is an interesting phenomenon, right? So I've seen a lot of people leave the industry completely. Completely. They were like, fuck this shit, I'm out. Then after a couple of years, they came back. They, in some cases, had like a better job. They had, well, a better earning job, like, you know, jobs that other people wanted as well. But they came back because games is special, you know? It's a bit of survivorship bias potentially going in there as well, where some people were like, oh, there's probably also the counter argument where other people that I know did something completely different and then kind of never look back. But I do think that games are special. Especially if you have like a lot of impact in how the game is made, you know? It is crazy. Fairy saying, just watch my part in the meantime, thanks for the feedback. It was all clear. First time making Trim Sheet was a bit painful. I didn't really understand the workflow at first. That's all good. You know, like first time making a Trim Sheet is always going to be painful. And then it's with everything, right? Like you do it first, it's going to suck. And then the second time it's like, oh yeah, I remember some of these like painful bits. And then at a certain point, it's like, yeah, I'll make a Trim Sheet. Sure. So you're on the right path. Josh is saying, and there are job listings too, you know? So like, it's not like the industry is gone. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's also a good thing to look at, right? It's like looking at like all the juniors that are still getting jobs, right? Potentially somewhat hard to find, but there are still like a lot of job postings as well. So yeah, it is again, I try to be realistic without like scaring people away, right? Is it going to be hard? Yes. Does this industry require a lot of you? Yes. But there's also so many rewards at the end of it, right? You get to work on like really creative projects. You get to have a lot of creative input on it, like visually, right? And you get to do like 3D modeling like your entire day or whatever your specialization is, right? I think it's like every dream job, people get emotionally invested. Yeah. And I would even call myself like I'm not necessarily I've gotten better and better at like separating like my personal and my work, right? Which is something that I advise anyone to do, especially in games, because otherwise it's gonna get brutal. Um but yeah. Well, I don't mind. I mean, Eden, we're just chilling here. Like, there's two more people that we need to have a look at, and then we're done for the evening. So I'm just chilling. Yeah, it would be. So I've been I've been I've been thinking about how to actually put this into words in a meaningful and actionable term, right? Hey, Merry Christmas, Joe. Merry Christmas, Eden. Merry Christmas to all of you. It's lovely. It's honestly lovely to have this like Christmas chat. I could put this in a long existential Discord like combo, but I won't because I will be here 90% of the stream. Yeah. What I was saying is that I love all this stuff, and it kind of hits on like a lot of touch points, right? I kind of want to see if I can turn that into like I don't know, like a workshop or something myself. I think that would be very interesting because I'm almost thinking about it as a way of like if you strip out like all the technical abilities that you need to have to get into the industry, what are some of the personality traits that you need to have or you need to like try to foster in yourself to then help yourself to like a good career? Because yeah, most of the stuff is like it's not surface level, right? But it's like artistic ability, your technical ability, like how you present yourself, your portfolio, all that kind of stuff. But like there's a lot of underlying things that can be very beneficial, right? It's stuff like curiosity, right? Curiosity, grit, determinism, like all those traits. That is like, do you know how to push yourself through like hard parts? Do you also know when like you reach your limit and you need to step back, right? Like it's like there's a lot of like deep conversations going on there. Christmas Eve, a pub and self-reflection, a British tradition. And now you're here doing the same thing without a pub. I think yeah, there was something I was gonna say, but then I think Josh, your kind of question leads into it. Let's see. Josh is asking, I'm trying to break into the industry via contracting and freelance work. What kind of separation would you recommend between my current career, like non-game dev, when interviewing for a gig? Fair is saying, I'm the only Grinch here that hates Christmas like a grumpy old man. I don't hate it. I'm just like pretty neutral, It is just like, I don't know. I love that other people celebrate it, right? And that it becomes like a tradition for them and their family. But like with us, it's always been like a little bit more fluid, Like we're having Christmas on the 27th because that's when everyone's available. Let's see. Josh is saying, so going back to your question, Josh, I'm trying to break into the industry via contracting or freelance work. What kind of separation would you recommend between my current career when interviewing for a gig? Example, I've been told, do not mesh your LinkedIn with your current career with your... Oh, I see. I see what you mean. I mean, LinkedIn is just your career, right? So if you're currently doing like non-game dev stuff, but you want to break in, I don't think your LinkedIn profile with all your previous employments is gonna be the thing that's gonna steer people away from what you want to do, right? It is almost like your LinkedIn profile is a vision of your former self, and then your portfolio is your vision of your future self, right? So as long as your portfolio doesn't reflect whatever you do now, then that's fine, right? Because it is always going to be portfolio first, and then your LinkedIn. You know, well, let's say I don't know, I did like a bunch of like weird random jobs before, right? No one cared. Given there were like not really full time jobs, it was like student work and all that kind of stuff, but no one really cared, you know. It is I do always wonder. That is such a cool way to look at that. I hate LinkedIn. Yeah. Oh my god, the whole social media conversation is also something that I want to do a talk about, you know? Because it is necessary as a marketing mechanic for artists. I do believe that. But then you need to find a healthy way to engage with the stuff that you want to engage with, right? But that's like a whole another rabbit hole. Would there be a concern of clients perceiving, well, this guy is an X, Y, and Z professionally, he's not serious about doing 3D environment art? Um, oh yeah, I guess that's a good question because you're talking specifically about like freelancing contracting, right? Well, I guess because you're in that starting position, right? The only thing that needs to happen in your case is you need to have that one chance, right? And then as soon as that gets off the ground and running, well, depending on how fruitful that work is going to be, then you can probably ditch it, right? Like, oh, you want to maintain your current career and do game dev stuff on top of it? Is that what you want? Or as soon as you get something that's like sustainable in game dev, do you then want to switch completely? Mm-hmm. The Grinch. I'm just imagining you, Fair, as in like a freaking Grinch outfit. But yeah, because I think, well, first of all, you're not going to be able to do two things at the same time, right? Like, that is big picture long term. The intention would be to evaluate as it progresses versus a hard cutover. Yeah, so you're doing some like on the side freelancing and contracting. I mean, I don't, from going back to the perception, right? I don't think that's going to be an issue necessarily again, because again, it's all about the portfolio, right? If your portfolio is good and they want to hire you for your artistic ability, they don't really care about like what's on your current LinkedIn, you know? I think that's going to be true. So yeah, I think I'm more looking at it from the perspective of, is it going to be feasible? And I think it's going to be, it's again, it's going to be difficult, right? Because usually contracting work or freelance work, they want the majority of your time. Because I don't really know a lot of people. Well, okay, I'll give you some context here. I don't know that many people who do freelance full stop, you know? So I don't know a lot of people, so I don't have enough context there. But from the people that I do know that are doing freelance, a lot of them usually get asked to do like full-time employments, or like close to. So yeah, I'd be curious to see how that works for you, Josh. Again, not saying that there's no opportunity there, right? Is that it's going to be interesting who you're going to be working with. And I'm talking about from the perspective of like AAA clients, right? So potentially indie games, they will have like more flexibility when it comes to it, usually. Yeah, I would love to talk to freelancers more about this stuff because I don't really have enough evidence of it. or like not enough data, you know? I want to get that juicy data. Right, let's have a look at Jake. Hope everyone's project is going well. Week 1 questions. How does the starting composition feel at the moment? Does it give off the feeling that you're discovering this building from an unintended path? So this was really interesting. Not yet, right? The path feels very intentional because I don't have enough context of why it would be unintentional in the first place, right? So that's why if we start adding these broken fences, maybe some bodies, maybe like a path here, you know, like once we show signs of like this was definitely not a path, but they made a path, that's when it's going to become clear, right? But that's why you need like an indication of, hey, this was definitely not a path, but now it is, right? And that's where this kind of like chain comes into play, right? Which I think was just like a chain link fence that connected both sides or something like that. But yeah, that kind of hints at like, hey, this used to be here before, but now it's no longer here, right? So once we get that, and once we start having some textures and all that kind of stuff, we can definitely indicate more of it. Any thoughts on the idea and the story that you feel needs changing or adding to? So, I had a look already. Let me read it for the chat as well. Just a second. So, Just saying, thanks for the feedback and answers. This is all helpful perspective. Yeah, I don't feel. Yeah, I don't feel like I added too much there, but yeah, something that I need to dive into it myself a little bit more. There's some more good context there. So back to Jake's post. Jake's story for this scene in question is travelers or explorers stumbling across this abandoned land only to be kidnapped and experimented on by its inhabitants, to then escape due to a natural disaster causing significant damage to the home, setting them free. Right. Okay, let's unpack that. So we got the story here. Explorers / travelers, they get kidnapped and then also experimented on, and then they escape through a natural disaster that happened, right? Always when it comes to these questions, how are we going to visualize this? Right? Because there's a lot of layers going on, right? So if we strip them away, so we got like your explorers, they get kidnapped. Well, I guess kidnapped and experimented on. And then they escape because there's a natural disaster as well, right? Which is, it's almost like it's two separate things. So we have 5 main things that we need to visualize, right? Which is a lot for us to visualize already. Because the reason why it's a lot, because sometimes you want to keep your story simpler, so that you can just let the visual cues take it from there, right? Because already, explorers that got kidnapped, how do you show that? Right? Like normally you would almost show something like you could have like the boot of the trunk, like the boot of the car open, and you could see that they dragged someone from the car to the house or something like that, right? That's like a very on the nose way of showing it, but at least we're showcasing it, right? How are we going to do something like that when the environment then got destroyed by a freaking hurricane that happened afterwards, right? Because we're basically erasing that section, right? So I think what we can do is we can show a place where there are signs of visible experimentation, but the kidnapping and like the explorers discovering this land, that is so niche and it's going to be covered up by some of the stuff that happens afterwards that it's going to be very, very hard to visualize that. But it's almost like, okay, how can we simplify this? Right? Because it is a bit too complex at the moment. So how can we simplify this? If we cut out these 2 layers, what can we then do with the rest of the layers, right? So this is like And we didn't even talk about like the abandoned land, right? So it's like an abandoned location. But again, that's also going to be difficult to visualize, because if it was abandoned before the storm and then it got destroyed by the storm, some of those signs that are going to be caused by the storm are going to coincide with the way that it feels abandoned, right? Because we're going to destroy the place, and abandoned basically does the same thing, just in a slower form, right? So it's again, it's like, it's going to be very tricky to showcase all of that, right? Where natural abandonment is fine, a storm is fine, because we can basically be more violent with the shapes that we use, right? More broken wood, like a path to destruction, like a piece of the house completely gone. All that kind of stuff can be really cool to visualize. But then trying to combine that with the slow decay that you get from like abandoned stuff, that's where it gets tricky, right? Because the abandonment can also be an effect of the storm. Right. So what I would focus on is, I would just focus on this like abandoned location, and it's going to be pushing it more into like what Hunt already is, right? Where it's like, it's this gruesome depiction where in this case, you don't know what's happening in this house. There's like a bunch of pig carcasses, you know? But if we turn those pig carcasses in, let's say, like those stereotypical like metal cages that could potentially hold people, right? We can then change the story in a way that is like very visually impactful. And then you can kind of make up your own story as you go along, right? So I would replace some of those pig carcasses with just some experimentation devices, right? To then see if we can visualize and turn this location more into something that you want to have or want to create. And then escaped through the natural disaster. I think that's going to be somewhat difficult, but I think because the nuances of escaping through the natural disaster then causing damage to the building, right? I think you can show them escaping, but I think the nuances of it, of how they escaped, can be more up to the player, right? Or like the viewer, in this case. So that could be something to question yourself about. Yeah, so I hope that was clear. I would definitely strip all this stuff down a little bit, make it way easier, and then see if you can add like some nuances like at the end, because usually that's way easier. Because for example, if we showcase, you know, you got like the torture devices, or like the experimentation devices like hanging here. There's some indications of people being locked up, skeletons in there, blah 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 blah. Right? Then we can kind of show that like a person did escape from this by running here, and then maybe another person didn't make it because they got stuck in like, I don't know, let's say barbed wire or something like that, right? But one other person did. And we can potentially do that by, let's imagine you have like barbed wire. You can then have like a piece of clothing just hanging from like barbed wire or something like that. Potentially. Right? But then you leave it more up to the viewer to decide like, ooh, why is that there? You know? Like you kind of leave some things ambiguous, because otherwise we're loading too much into the story. And that becomes very tricky to visualize. Right? Okay, Jake. Cool that you're trying to come up, that you are making your own story, right? You are definitely doing it, but sometimes less is more. And I would always think about like, okay, the story is cool, right? You've kind of set up a story. How do I visualize that? Like, how do I turn that into like an actual visual that people can lash onto and can understand that like this exact thing has happened, right? That's right. Try to do a little bit of role play and imagine how that would look. Cool. Thank you, Jake. Right, and then we have Joe. Joe is doing good. Joe is saying happy Christmas. Have a great Christmas. Same thing to you, Joe. Hope you're having a lovely Christmas as well. I think it's fairly close, but the wood color and the roughness still don't seem right, and I'm struggling to get the right mix without it looking wet. Please let me know if you have any ideas. I honestly don't think that the roughness is too far off, you know? I think the roughness is getting to like a really, really good spot. I think it is honestly now more up to the colors again, right? Because even if we look at this sliver, see how complex the colors are compared to your colors here, right? There's still a lot of color complexity missing, even though like this is a massive, massive improvements compared to last time, right? It looks way more interesting. And I think if we look at the stages, right, like it's almost like last week we were looking at like a color block-in, right? Like a very rough, quick color block-in. This is almost like we have like base color setup for all the individual patterns and all the individual materials, which is looking really good. Now it's time for the detail pass on top of it and actually add like the wear and tear on top of it. And that's where all this stuff comes in, right? Like the different discoloration and the scratches and, you know, like that's gonna look sick. Yeah. Let me see. So yeah. What I would say is be bold, you know. This is oftentimes what I see when I see people texturing or doing anything really. It is best to be bold at first and then dial things back rather than to take it like one step by step, you know? Like really for this kind of stuff, I would look at the lightest color that you can see here. Probably, I don't know, like some of this edge damage or some of like this color, right? That you can see. Add that with like a grunge on top and see what that does, you know? It's going to look horrendous, but then at least it's going to give you an indication of like, okay, I'll just dial it back a little bit. And then, ooh, I can maybe do that with a darker color too, and then dial it back too. And then from that point on, you kind of have another layer on top of your stack. And then it becomes more just about like, okay, if I turn those down to like a lower amount, right? So that they blend in really nicely, you can then do that with more specific layering on top of it. Right? I think that's going to be really, really cool. But it's literally just try to do what I do, right? Like try to look at like this specific area and just be like, okay, what can I see? What different layers do I see, right? And have like the edge highlights. You have like all this like dirt and like oil kind of collecting on the top edge. You kind of have like a lighter edge down here. You know, try to really look at all the details and try to replicate it. And it'll get there, you know? This is already an awesome improvement. Just gotta keep it going. Hello, McFal. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you too, buddy. I hope you had a great time or have a great time with your family. In the meantime, we're gonna switch it over from here to to Josh's work in our Discord. Let's have a look. Last couple of weeks I've been working on setting up materials, having a rough version of the wood floor now in, started modeling some more props, and also tweaked lighting and composition further in the feedback received. Cool, I like feedback on. Does this composition, especially the centerfold with the victim and the coffee table, looks like it could use anything else, or does it hit natural looking space disrupted by a struggle? I am thinking of adding more hanging pieces like clothes lying behind the bed or wire hangers, all that kind of stuff. Let's have a look. Yeah, so a couple of quick questions. So right now, so I do like the way that you added like all this stuff in here, right? Which is cool. The only weird thing now is that the guy got bonked on his head right here. Bonk. Cool. Why is the murder weapon here though? right? It kind of feels, and also like how did he fall like that way? Because I'm almost imagining. Okay, let's role play this, right? As gruesome as it is, I'm sitting here, I'm losing at cards, so I get really pissed, and then I just, I don't know, I just go grab. It depends on where you go, right? Like I go grab like a tool from here, I then come back into the room and then bonk this guy on his head when he's sitting here, right? Potentially, because I want to do it when he's not looking. I'm doing this in his back. Bonk him on the head, and then he falls over, but then he's probably going to be face down, right? Rather than face up. Right? And then the chair is probably going to be somewhat like fallen over, kind of following where he's going, right? Don't clip this out of context. This is giving feedback on like all of this stuff, like even the last one is yeah, a very very questionable if you do any sort of clipping. So yeah. Yeah, I'm playing dodgeball with like YouTube algorithm at the moment. That's what I'm doing. So yeah, that's what I would think of, right? Like how the sequence of events went and what the end result is of what happened then in the scene, right? And again, like the person running away is gonna be difficult, right? Because we're not really gonna visually be able to showcase that. Apart from maybe the other chair, you know, like, because this is person 1, he's a bad person. And number 2 is a good person. We'll give him like blue. And then person 2 fell on the floor. And then person 1, after bonking this guy on the head, then ran away. Right? But like, it's gonna be tricky to visualize this. Apart from doing like, you know, like stereotypical where there's like an open door. But this is, I mean, the police is already in here. So maybe you can do an open door plus some evidence on the floor or something like that, right? But then we need like a new camera angle and all that stuff. We don't want to do that. But yeah, showcasing the sequence of events could be good here. Let me see. I am just gonna paste that in here. Do this. But definitely, like, it does feel like a more natural looking space, for sure. I like that you filled up the middle. Now it's reintegrating it with like how it feels with the rest of the scene, right? Additional feedback on some of the supporting shots, as I've, based on last feedback, made some changes to them in terms of angle and placement. You do have the option here. You kind of do something with the door, potentially. And that could be cool. If you're doing the shot anyway. I mean, it's a stretch, you know, like I'm just gonna add this as a question mark. You don't need to do this, but I feel like it would definitely, it would help in terms of like telling the story, right? The sequence of events that led to this moment. So that could be potentially something to explore. Let's see, what else? Yeah, this shot is way better. I think the only thing that's weird about this shot now is like you can't even see it in the chat, with my camera being in the way. But you do have this area. Well, shit, you can't even see it now. The wrench is like behind my camera here, right at the bottom. I think that's just like weirdly not in the scene, like barely in the scene. So I think if you move that to like where the actual stuff happened, then that's gonna resolve itself, really. The original story in the sequence was kicked in the door, struggle in the living room, drop the wrench on the way to escape through the kitchen to the fire escape. Okay. Okay, okay. Okay. I mean, that can still be valid, right? Like what I would do then is in this shot, if we want to do something here, let me see if we can zoom in a little bit and I mean, I'm gonna have to do like a little bit of a paint over. What I was gonna say is in this shot, right, where we have the window and that's our exit point. Then it just becomes more important to emphasize like how they exited, right? Because we kind of want to make sure that like it reads like this person like exited like in a hurry, right? So I'm thinking, you know, there's like a window frame where like the window, it's one of those like slightly up windows that you have, right, in a lot of places. So it has those windows, but maybe there's also like blinds before it as well. But the blinds are like kind of disturbed, right? So they're kind of like frayed in a way that you can see that like this person just like really just like quickly picked them up and then just like made their escape that way, you know? So it's basically the question of so how do I show the person escaping in a hurry? Ah, so the blinds have dropped but damaged with the broken window. Potentially, yeah, that could also be a good one. Yeah, like that could also be a good idea, right? Like you could even have like the window is smashed in because it was in a real hurry. Maybe even smashed in with like the wrench. Because then what we're doing is we're almost, you know, like the wrench is like kind of just here. He used it to smash in the window, and then we can kind of signal like, hey, this is the evidence, you know? Linking to linking the viewer to be like, oh shit, okay, he left this stuff here, right, and then ran out. But there's so many ways of doing this, right? I chose like a slightly different direction, whereas like he shoved the window open, like crawled kind of through the blinds, and the blinds got fucked up through the process. But you can also be like, hey, look, what if he smashed in the window? There's no blinds whatsoever, and then he used that to escape. You know, like he just left a wrench there. Could also work, right? As long as we have like a visual way of indicating, like, oh, this person left in a hurry, and ideally we link it back to the scene of the crime, right? By making it as visual as possible. Because yeah, there's always a lot of options here. Basically, we can experiment with different ways in which that happens and flows with the storytelling. Yeah, yeah. The way that I would approach it is that's the same thing I was trying to do with the door, right? Like I would try to showcase the evidence in the same way or like in the same area as the route that they use to escape, right? Because that is, and maybe it's a bit like overdone, but it's an easy way for the viewer to tell like, hey, this is a sequence of events, because there's also an evidence marker there next to a wrench which he then used in the crime, right? So it's an easy way for you to like link everything together by using the evidence as like a tool to link everything together sequentially. But that doesn't mean that you need to do it, right? Because sometimes there's also, you have the wrench on the floor, and then you could have like some dirty footsteps just like running out of the window. That can also be a good indication, right? Or I don't know, like a shitty gas canister and there's like gasoline on the floor, but he fumbled like his his attempts to cover up the crime, you know, because he didn't have like a match or he couldn't like light it on time or something like that. You know, there's so many cool ways that you can like link all these things together, right? Bam. Good shit, Josh. Pardon my French. You get one for free because it's Christmas. That's my gift to you. All makes sense and is helpful and definitely gives me ideas to experiment with. Yeah, that's honestly the fun part, you know? This is a fun part where you kind of have like the roots of a story, but then you can still like shift. You can still shift all the individual components around a little bit to what makes the most sense to you and also is the best representation of your scene, right? So, yeah. Good stuff, Josh. Right. I am already gonna press enter on giving you like all these overpaints, and then I'll give you the link to the live stream and all that kind of stuff afterwards too. Thanks for the freebie, appreciate it. Yeah, Merry Christmas. I was actually debating on getting a Christmas hat, but they didn't have one in the shop. Yeah. Fair, are we done? Yes. That was fast. Fast? It's 2.5 hours. I'm over time. I feel like, to be fair, in the last couple of months, it's been long, you know. It's been some long streams, which I don't really mind. I feel like honestly, weirdly, even though it is the exact same time, it feels like here I don't mind taking so much time because the way the way that we have the house set up now is it's less disruptive for me to keep talking for a long time because my partner sleeps a bit further back in the house. So that means that I can more easily go like over time with the streams and stuff, which is good. Good. Not that I want to do it every time, but now we have the option, you know, where the option wasn't there before. Hey, Slate, good to see you. Sick this week, but I'm glad to say hi at the end of the stream. Hey, buddy. Also, Merry Christmas to you, Slate. Good to see you here. Right. Happy holidays. Let's go. Like I said in the beginning of the stream, my holidays has literally been just like data wrangling, you know? I've been like knee deep in like Google Sheets and CSV files for like the past couple of days. And I will be in an hour and a half again because that's when we're doing like a migration that I mentioned in our community as well. But I need to verify that all works. Then hopefully I don't have to do that for a long time and I can finally have everything set up for the business side in Belgium because that whole transfer, odd, fun. So hey, that's my Christmas gift to myself, I guess. Like a whole bunch of terrible business bullshit to take care of. But it's fine. It's fine. Sounds fun. Yeah. Yeah, no. But yeah, it's this was a fun thing. Like what are you gonna do in the future when more people join PE Team? Eventually doing these portfolios becomes impossible time-wise. It's interesting, Fair. It's interesting that you bring that up because I think, and I might be wrong on this, and I might be shooting myself in the foot when I say this, the way the growth of the community is steady, right? Which means that the people making use of Whip Wednesday has actually not seen a dramatic growth. I think we've seen some spikes in certain occasions, right? Where like I think the most that we had to do was like 20 people or something like that, which is manageable, right? But like for example, past couple of weeks we've been around like 10, 15, which is manageable. I think that's like a good chunk of time. I do have some flexibility, you know, so I could add some more time to it, but there's gonna be a fall off point at some point. My idea thinking there is that, yeah, maybe we'll do like a second stream, or what we could do is invite other people to also help me with that, right? Because we did some trial stuff like that in the beginning of the year. And that might also be interesting because what is happening, and yeah, like Eden says, like time will tell. We'll have to see what decision gets made at that point. But there's one thing, and I'll go more deeply into like the video that I'll do on this this week about the recap for the year. But there's one thing that I do want to do more, and it's the community engagement. And that is very broad category in my head, but I have some specific ideas for that. We started doing, for example, we have like the whole achievement and rewards kind of thing, right? I kind of want to double down on that and also reward people for like giving other people feedback, and then maybe also incorporating them into like occasionally giving like a feedback thing themselves, you know, which could be cool. But that's, I don't know, that's an interesting idea that I just had. Returning of Friday streams confirmed. So, in the new year, I will be doing my first contract as like, well, I guess as a freelancer, as like Beyond Extend as a business, right? But I will not be working Fridays. So who knows, you know? Maybe I did that on purpose. Maybe I didn't. I guess time will tell. Good little tease to end out the year. Because I think, let me double check actually. 100% confirmed. Yeah, so next week there will not be a Whip Wednesday. I think I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. Kind of sift through like some of my ideas, what I want to do with the next bit of the year. But yeah, so next week there will not be a Whip Wednesday. But yeah, I do have some ambitions for the next year, right? I do wanna experiment a little bit. So, as I said last week, I think with portfolio reviews, I do want to bring them back. I was actually working on them today again, trying to collect the way that I was going to do them, right? But I want to set up some resources for that on the website so that it's a bit more supported than it was last time. Tim will return. Hit those end credits. Yeah. Have a splendid break, Tim. See you next year. Yeah, thanks, Swan. I will. It's also going to be good because, yeah, the new contract will begin in the new year, so it's kind of like my, a good break right now. I'm not going to disappear, you know. I'm going to be doing like a lot of B stuff in the background that I need to do, but I do want to take a little bit of a break, and then go into the full year refreshed with like a bunch of new ideas as well. Fair. That is a good question. So what was the reason you stopped doing the portfolio reviews? So the main reason was, and I think I explained it at the time as well, was that it was too repetitive. And I feel like the same thing is going to happen again, but I think the way that I'm doing it now, where we inject like a little bit of fun, like a little bit of slight competition, maybe not competition, but like there's going to be like scores and I don't know, like a leaderboard and all that kind of stuff that we can add to it, right? Maybe not a leaderboard, we'll see. But I want to inject a bit like a little bit more fun and kind of gamify the whole thing, because I think that's going to ease up with the frustration from my side that just basically every time I just need to say like the same thing. Right? So in a way, weirdly enough, I'm thinking about like leaning into it, but turning it into a format where like we turn it into like a point system that, you know, we can then use. But yeah, the long story short was basically that it was too repetitive. It was just always the same sort of advice, which is also why once I've got like all the different attributes figured out that I'm going to be using to judge basically people's portfolios, that they can basically also study upon those like little attributes themselves, so that even if I don't get to see them for portfolio review, they already have that stuff in the back pocket if they wanted to. So that's what I'm thinking. maybe do like a little short video, like overviewing the whole thing on the sign-up page of the portfolio reviews. I think that would be cool. But yeah, it was a lot of the same advice that I would give. Just trying to be unique, and it was just, yeah, a little bit repetitive at some point. Yeah. And I think to a certain degree that's always going to happen, right? Because at a certain point, if you want to get in as an environment artist, you're going to have to do, like, in general, you know, like the same sort of things that a lot of other people have done before you. So of course there's going to be a lot of overlap in the advice, right? So maybe what we can do, or maybe what I can look into, is like already set up a resource, like a YouTube video or something like that, and talk about the common things, right? So that we can then use portfolio reviews to then focus on the more unique things about that person's portfolio, right? So that's basically what I'm saying, is that there was a lot of repetition, yes, but also I basically needed to really think about the way that I set the portfolio reviews up, so that we kind of remove a lot of that friction that comes from the repetition. People are going to make the same mistakes over and over again. Yeah, I think so. And I think also what could be good, as I'm saying all this now, is I want to have more context. Because what happened before is that people would give like a tiny bit of context, you know, just like one liner or something like that, and then a link, you know? And it's like, yeah, what do you really do with that, right? Like if you basically ask like a couple of questions and you tell me, hey, I want to work for this company, I want to work in this style, like these are my ambitions, these are my favorite games, like some generic questions, right? Like gives me a lot of fuel to then kind of see where you're coming from and where you want to go, right? Whereas before, I could only really see the portfolio, and that was it. As I'm saying so, that might also be good. Dang it. Well, I'll think about it. But yeah, I will say this though, like I've been watching a lot of art related stuff, and it makes me itch. Like I do want to get back into art. God, I do miss doing art. It's been a while. But yeah, who will know what's going to happen in the new year? It will be fun though. It'll be fun if I can do some more art in some sort of way. Yeah, I appreciate you always asking the good questions, Fairpora. Really appreciate it. All right, we are not gonna make this any longer than it needs to be. I'm gonna let you all go back to your holidays. Enjoy the rest of your vacation. We will see each other back on, when is the first day again? On the 7th, which is going to be 2 weeks from now, on Wednesday for another Whip Wednesday. And yeah, I mean, for people that I'm not going to be talking to in the community, I wish you all happy holidays, a fantastic new year, and yeah, I'll see you in the recap video that I'll do. And that's probably the last time this year that we're going to be seeing each other. So enjoy the rest of your year. I hope you have a great start of the next year. And then, yeah, we will see each other soon. Bye-bye.